Welcome to the show. Once again, everybody, the Greg Chapman Show. This is a show mainly meant for facilitators and trainers conducting workshops virtually or face-to-face on any kind of behavioral topic, from leadership to self-awareness to high-performing teams at all. The idea of this conversation is to help fellow trainers, facilitators, and even instructional designers learn techniques, change mindsets, ways of looking at things, or bust some facilitation myths, tips and tricks to find their ways in here. And all of this from masters of their craft from across the world. If you're starting out in your facilitation journey, or if you're a veteran at it, you'll find something in here for yourself. Today's guest on the show is Dr. Trupti Jain. Dr. Trupti is an occupational therapist from GS Medical College, Mumbai, and subsequently did her MA and MPhil in clinical psychology from Bombay University. She's been trained by a German priest in Gestalt therapy, and she has been doing psychodrama, something after my own heart, workshops with schools for a long time. She has learned narrative therapy and NLP. She's also a Bernian transaction analyst. And actually, that's how we met, but that's a story for a different time. She also heads the Zen Den counseling team at Lokanwala Foundational School, ICSE. Since the last 7 years, her interest in transpersonal psychology led her to learning past life therapy from Dr. K. Newton, Dr. Brian Weiss, and Chris Hansen. She's been practicing hypnotherapy and past life therapy for the last 25 years. She's been instrumental in popularizing past life therapy through the 2 seasons of Raz Pichle Janam Ka, shown on primetime television, that made her a household name and everyone familiar with this spiritual science. She did about 108 live regressions on the show. You can even find this on YouTube. She's an international facilitator and has appeared on several TV channels like NETV, Z, India TV, Aaj Tak, to speak on talk shows. She's appeared on a TED Talk in 2016. She's been invited as a speaker on India Today Symposium and featured as one of the 11 spiritual masters in a book by Sneha Mehta. The last 25 years, she's been working at a psychiatric hospital called Cozy Clinic in Mumbai. She's also been awarded the Hira Manik Award for the Best Doctor in 2010, felicitated by Diamond Merchant Chamber in popularizing past life therapy. She has presented papers at the Association of Research in Reincarnation conferences, and in the NCTA on transaction analysis and regression 2016-17. She's been invited to prestigious TED Talks 16 and 20. The Black Hole, a documentary made by the French Archaeological Institute in Paris, featured her. She's done nearly 7,000 individual regressions and hundreds have attended her workshops. She's been teaching past life therapy since a decade at Yog Niketam Ashram, Rishikesh, which is close to where I live. Her retreats on inner child healing, advanced therapeutic modalities include life between life, EMDR, and family constellation. Her book, Beyond to Bliss, A New Paradigm of Healing, will be published soon. And welcome to the show, Trupti.
Thank you, Greg. That was quite long and you didn't need to read so much.
Yeah, I did not know what to cut out. It all seems so relevant and you've done so much and I didn't want to take any of that away. So yeah, I think we're always becoming too efficient in things and cutting it down. I said, let it just go. Let me get stuff out. And so good to have you here.
Thank you, Greg. It's wonderful to be here also.
Thanks. Trupti, I want to start with, you've been a facilitator for a long time, but I want to switch tables this time. And I want to ask you, Can you tell me, see, a lot of people, that whole 70-20-10 principle, a lot of people say the best learning happens in the real world. And as a facilitator, sometimes I like to think a huge amount of learning for me has happened in the classroom. So I want to poke around that a little bit and see, when you were on the other side of the table, as in the receiving end, as a participant, what's one or two of your moments or programs that have really stood out for you, have been transformational for you? If you could unpack that a little bit.
So, Greg, when you say what program stood out for me, it's been like really years. Okay, I had to rack my brains to really find out which facilitators and what really stood out for me. But if I can count like kind of Vipassana as one of the programs that I attended when I was 18 and set me out on this journey of spiritual seeking, I'd say that most of the programs that I've attended have been like Vipassana, because the facilitators have given a lot of space to the participants to express themselves. They've allowed you to speak a little longer than generally the time permits. They've allowed you to speak about your feelings and emotions. They've allowed you to explore yourself more, whether it's your mind, it's your emotions, it's your relationships. So I think facilitators that have touched the core of my being are the ones that have stayed with me. So if I have to name one, Dr. K. Newton, who was my past life teacher also. I remember when I attended his workshop more than 20 years ago, I had never heard anything on past life therapy. I mean, we all know about reincarnation and rebirth and all that, but how many of us really understand therapeutic modality called past life therapy? And I remember him, I can still remember him and see him in my mind's eye, his soft smile, his gentle way of looking at you, the way he stood, the way he sat. It was like very inviting and engaging. And even the eye contact, which is something that I really value in a facilitator. That's something that Dr. Newton had. And he had me sold on past life therapy. I went for a 2-day workshop and I landed learning from him. The very first batch that he had of 6 of us only, by the way, for a 7-day retreat. Just 6 people. But he engaged us for all 6 days, morning to night. I mean, that's the kind of engagement I enjoyed so much with Dr. Newton. I think I've never had it with anyone else, really. Because most people treat it like business. Workshops and retreats are like a business for most people. But not for Dr. Newton. He really put his heart and soul in the teaching. So I like that, that little personal touch, speaking to you about your issues, very gently prodding. That's the kind of quality I enjoy in a facilitator, and I've seen it with him.
For a lot of people, when they recount their an experience which really stands out for them, a lot of people tend to talk about the being aspect of it. I mean, as in opposed to, let's say, a framework or a method or a model. A lot of people talk about that. And I'm reminded of Carl Rogers and how he was really known for being so empathic. And that's also something I hear, your empathy and being present for you, treating it something like a labor of love versus treating it like a business.
Yeah.
So how did that change you? Any one change, if you can share with us, what are some changes that came about you because of that experience?
Well, it was a time when I just lost my father, Greg, when I met Dr. Newton and went for his workshop. And I was still mourning and struggling to understand the life on the other side. And I wanted to know a lot about the soul's forward journey. And I think what appealed to me was the scientific presentation of the content. Dr. Newton presented everything in a very scientifically researched manner. And because I was from the background of science and I like the investigative kind of, seeking, I really liked that, the way he presented his content. And he connected it very beautifully, to uh, personal grief and personal struggles and the theory of karma. So everything was connected very well with science. And I thought that was something that, I took from that talk.
Hmm.
I thought it was very motivating. And I was quite young at that time. So I felt like connected to what he was saying. And also, Greg, we come from a, uh, from a belief system that unless science says it's right, uh,
Right.
you know, it can't be. So I think the kind of presentation itself is very good for me to understand. So I think that is something that motivated me further. And I took that. I mean, even in my own workshops, I learned from him, the way he presented his material. I'm talking about 20 years ago. But that stayed with me. The kind of visualization exercises he would do, or the kind of presentations he would do. I really enjoyed that. The way he would connect the content with any scientific discovery. So whether it was quantum entanglement theory, or it was orbs or something like that, you would connect it. And that's something I enjoyed the most. And I took that. Even now when I facilitate, I always relate it to some scientific data. Because spirituality otherwise is very difficult to explain.
In fact, yeah, so hard notes, soft nose stuff in a very hard nose kind of a way. You're combining the two. I remember your TED talk. You're also using a lot of science behind that, and
Yeah.
quantum entanglement is something that you spoke of even in that
Yeah.
talk. So, yeah, and I think it's like different kind of learners. So for some of us, for a lot of us, until and unless we see the science, we see the numbers, we see the left brain stuff, that kind of creates a passageway into the right brain kind of stuff. And in a way, you've kind of answered my next question, which was, and this is what I was going to ask you. Earlier on, we were speaking that you did not know anything, or you went in kind of a blank slate into Dr. Newton's work. A lot of times, I'm sure with many workshops you do, you must be getting people that come into your workshop not knowing too much, hearing about this, however, having a lot of baggage for past life regression, and say, that's kind of doesn't work, or just something for fables, and so on and so forth. So my question was going to be, how do you break through that? To use a strong word, cynicism, but yeah, how do you break through that? So one of the ways, what I'm taking away is through the science and through the numbers and the data. How else do you break through something like that? Somebody's just coming there to see, okay, let's see, and maybe I can poke fun, or maybe I don't know. Let me just see. One way of saying it is, yeah, if you want to learn, it's on you, man. But maybe there's something for that person too. So apart from the numbers and apart from the science, how do you deal with something like that?
Well, I think I like to give personal accounts, personal changes that have happened to me. So personal, um, changes in my own life. I think that's really how I'd start. And then, of course, I have a lot of clients who've been kind enough to give their testimonial videos. So that's the other thing that I use, because creates that human link, like a chain, like a kind of feeling that, oh my God, she had this problem and I have the same problem. So testimonial videos really help, you know. And then, of course, there are lots of kind of analogies to explain spiritual stuff, like the sea can be explained, you know, and say that just like the waves in the ocean, um, uh, there is kind of Brahman, okay, there is this huge, large cosmos, and then that's like the ocean, and we are just little waves, and the waves don't die. We just come back into the whole. So the part whole phenomena. So I use a lot of analogies to get across the point. So I try and do that. But I'll put a lot of emphasis on personal stories because I think that is very important. You know, as a facilitator, if I just talk about Dr. Weiss said this, or Dr. Newton said this, or Deepak Chopra says this, it doesn't work. They want to hear what made you a believer. Because we all begin our journey as a skeptic, right? We don't begin our journey as a believer. And I always tell them I was a skeptic. I always start like that and say I didn't believe that past lives were there. I'd read about it, but I didn't believe in it. But then something happened in my life for me to change from a skeptic to a believer. And this is what happened. So I think giving your own personal stories hooks people. They want to learn, they want to hear a real story, not something from a book or something, somebody said this. I never really use such phrases. And then people start off, you know, they'll say, you know, I've had this experience. Like to give an example, you know, especially when we speak about death and what happens post death, and then what kind of miraculous visitations I have had. And then there'll be somebody in the group who'll say, yes, it's happened to me too. Yes, it's happened like this to me too. And then suddenly, you know, there's this feeling that we're in a safe space where we can discuss such surreal experiences because the facilitator themselves is talking about it. That creates that safety net that people need when they have to open up about their own personal experience. It's very difficult.
I'm trying to decode this for our listeners and viewers, saying that, so you've taken the fundamentals of ethos, pathos, and logos, and you've kind of aligned certain instruments to each of them. So for ethos, or you're saying, how can I use social proof? How can I get my testimonials, get that up there, creates the background, you know what, this is not just me saying it, it's a lot of other people saying it. The logos bit of it, you're saying, hey, you know what, it's not just me, it's not just other people, but it's also the science that says it, and the many experiments, and go read if you don't believe me, and I'm sure it's out there. And the pathos, you know, how do you hook people, the emotional bit of it. Just can't get away from storytelling. This very powerful tool that everybody knows, everybody has been a part of, you know, growing up, or even telling a lot of stories. And I'm saying this is how this is what I'm taking away from it. This is how you're convincing or influencing.
Yes, absolutely right. Yes.
And you know, I'm thinking this topic is going to be a little tough for so many reasons, so many reasons. One is the belief. One is your being present and putting everything aside. One is knowing your stuff. On the one hand, on the other hand, you've done this for so many years. Do you still, you know, I had this saying I came up with, I cooked this saying up, saying, apart from marriage, training is the easiest thing to get wrong, right? So, you know, it's been so many years, thousands of workshops, you know, maybe more. Do you still get it wrong sometimes? Just about a year back, just before the COVID, there was this mindfulness I was doing for a client, cut and dried. I'd done my chats with people and I'd gone there, and uh, I'd gone to the workshop. It was same old, done this before. And the workshop, I felt went well. I came out of it, really kicked and feeling super. And I called the client, and the client says, sorry, Greg, it didn't go too well. It bombed. And I'm like, holy cow, how did it bomb? And until now, it just evades me. Yeah, I got a few things in my head. Maybe I did too many things in too short a span of time, something. But so does something like that happen to you or not?
I think it happens to everybody. It doesn't matter how many years you worked or what experience you had, because the more years that you invest in your work,
Mhm.
personally, I feel that you want to give more. That okay, I've got so much, and then in those 2 hours or 2 days or 10 days, whatever it is, you want to give people a lot more, and then you make mistakes. You don't look at the time, you just overstep as far as the timing goes. uh, you want to talk more.
Hmm.
You want to give more, so you want to talk more. And in a group of 20, 25, 40 people, there'll be some who'll keep asking questions.
Hmm.
And then, you feel, okay, this is a very interesting question, and this answer is going to make them feel happy. So then you spend time, and then you just lose track of time. And it happens to me a lot. I really have to control myself, because I feel, this whole thing about dying empty.
Hmm.
So, so it's really influenced me, okay? So I feel I should just give all that I know and all that I've learned. And then sometimes I just go overboard. It happens to me. And I've planned everything,
Uh-huh.
but yet I don't keep
Could you
to
give
the
us an
time.
example?
Yeah, like
Only if you could.
sometimes, yeah, I mean, sometimes, I have planned, okay, today I'm going to be teaching, let's say, because we met during our TA workshop. So let's say if I think of drivers, okay, and as a class on drivers, I've prepared the PPT, and, I've prepared the videos, and
You said
I
drivers,
know
is it?
exactly what to say.
Sorry to interrupt. You said
Drivers is
drivers.
the topic from
Oh yes, from TA. Yeah, yeah,
TA,
yeah. That kind of drivers, of course. Yeah,
from transaction analysis.
yeah.
And then there'll be some people who will talk about their personal problems,
Yeah.
which is not really part of the whole thing, okay? And then I'll just, from the helper mode,
Ah,
right, get into their story,
okay.
and then the time goes.
Hmm.
And they don't mind it. That the group will not mind it. They'll say, "Ma'am, it's okay. 15 minutes more. We don't mind staying on." But then I feel there was no requirement to do that, right? So I think sometimes, Greg, after so many years, you just get caught in your own story of, or your own, archetype, right? Like I'm this helper archetype.
Yeah.
So I think I just get caught in my own drama. And that becomes a problem later on. And the other thing interesting that has happened, I'm just used to having groups where people don't mind talking and sharing a lot. But when I work with corporates, Greg,
Hmm.
you know, open workshops are different, right? Because people don't know exactly what they're getting into. But when I'm called to work for corporates, I really have a problem, because I find I just finished a 12-day workshop with a very big corporate house, and I had these executives. Okay, and uh, the topic was transactional analysis. So there was drivers, and there was injunctions, and people had to talk about their personal PACs and stuff like that.
Hmm.
You wouldn't believe it. It took 15 minutes for me to get them to speak.
Oh.
They were not willing to talk about their personal stories. And by the time 2-3 classes got over, they realized that this is a different kind of workshop. It's not about skill training and time management and stuff like that, right? It was about themselves, their being, like you said.
Right.
And I told them, what is the hesitancy? What is it that's stopping you from speaking about, And they said, ma'am, we are not used to such workshops. And I don't know why the HR has decided to, give us this. And then it was 2.5 hours, by the way, every day.
Wow.
And for them to take out that much time from their busy schedule is really tough, right?
Yeah.
But, by the time we finished the 12 days and we took feedback, they all said this was unique for us. Because we have suddenly got connected to who we are, who we want to be, and not who we want to be, but we want to be with our children, with my spouse, at work. So it was huge for them, and their people. And I remember when we spoke about strokes, how to get positive strokes from others, appreciation from others. There were so many of them who told me, ma'am, how do you propose we get strokes? Because we're sitting in a cabin whole day. So we are not really interacting with anybody for us to get even appreciation.
Yeah.
So it was like a challenge for me because, generally I would say things how to get strokes. But here was a group of people who don't interact at all except on the email or on the phone. So how do they get positive strokes in the day? So it challenged me, really. This corporate group was really challenging for me. I wanted to make it so interesting for them. And I had to rack my head, trust me. And there's a distinct difference, Greg. Working in an open workshop where people come and enroll themselves for the topic. And when you are called to do a workshop and a topic is kind of given to you, and I told them I need to know the sample size, I need to know who are these people, what are their lives all about. And they said, ma'am, ye to what difficult hai. We cannot, from where are we going to get each person's biodata and what they do with their home and how many children they have and all that. I said, how do you propose I interact with them then? So the first 2 sessions was really tough for me. Then they got the gist of it. And then, things rolled. And then there was a lot of conversation, especially, Greg, when we spoke about life scripts and the stories. It was the last session, I remember the 12th session, and everyone was wanting to talk about their stories. So that at the end of those 12 days, I actually heaved a sigh of relief. So yeah, I face tough times sometimes.
Just as an aside, or rather an insert for those looking at this episode, if you're wondering what's a stroke, it's a form of appreciation or love, physically or verbally, that you get from somebody else. Sometimes you can even give it, you can give yourself a stroke. So that's a transaction analysis terminology, as is life scripts, just in case you're wondering, as is drivers. So if you just Google this and read these 3 pieces up, it's great stuff. Maybe sometime we'll get Trupti on the line, and Trupti will take us through these pieces. But in the meantime, you can Google this up. And so back again, Trupti, I just want to ask you the same workshop, if you keep this in your mind. And so what I see is 2 worlds for you. One world is your open programs, and I'm going to ask you something around that in a bit. The other world is the corporate and then in-house program, where people are nominated and pushed into it. Open programs, what I have seen is that motivation levels to learn are very, very, very high. And a lot of times, especially if it's self-sponsored or people
Yeah.
really want to learn. And sometimes in a corporate workshop, like you're saying, I don't know why I'm here. I'm just here because somebody in HR told me to be. Now, if that's the context, and if you were to do this same workshop all over again, is there something that you'd like to do differently or not?
You mean with the
This 12-day workshop you just spoke of.
oh, yeah, I would have definitely done it slightly differently. I would have insisted on knowing a little bit more about the participants,
Mhm.
or sent them like a form or like a pre-work,
Mhm.
where they write about themselves. Certain questions would have been sent to them. They would have sent it back to me. So I had a general idea about the kind of um, group that I'm getting into. It would have really helped me to plan better. And also, I would have inserted some games to play for the group to come together. The only problem, Greg, is I don't know what you face, but in the corporate world that I am engaging with, is many of them skip classes.
Mm.
So that becomes a challenge for me, because I'm sure for everybody, because they'll miss two classes, so two topics are gone. And then they come for the third or the fourth or the sixth class, and then they can't make sense, right, of the whole thing. Though the recorded version is sent to them, but then maybe they don't really hear the recorded version. Though I had checklists, Greg, that I would send them every day. Like if there was a particular topic, I would send them a checklist prior. So they would fill it up, they'll get their scores and stuff like that. So I made it a little bit more, interactive in that way. But it was not enough.
Thanks for
I
sharing
think
that.
corporates, at least for people like facilitators like me, are a challenge,
Right.
because they are not interested in knowing themselves.
Mm.
I think they just go to work to earn money.
Yeah.
It's
Not.
a very different world. I mean,
Mm.
I'm not able to relate to that world. And also, Greg, I don't have the corporate lingo.
Yeah.
So, it's very difficult. I mean, because they are used to having facilitators who speak in a certain way.
Right. No, it's corporate lingo. Yeah, I know what you're saying. Yeah, I know what you're saying.
I don't have that,
And
right? So it's very, I mean, sometimes, and I will go straight to where it hurts.
yeah.
And they are not comfortable with that.
Yeah.
And in a virtual space, I think it's very challenging.
Oh, yes. And I think that so virtual space very challenging. And the other part is that the work that you're doing is a lot about the being.
Yeah,
And so
yeah,
reading about it is one level,
yeah,
yes. But
yeah.
bad enough you're doing it in the virtual space, but then you just miss out and go away. So that whole experiential bit, even if it is virtual, it's very powerful to just be a part of it.
Very, very
Yes,
powerful. Very
experience
powerful.
it. So
Yeah.
how do you replace experience? God knows, So I think that's just doubles the quandary.
No,
Yeah.
I think, Greg, what you have to do, what I did was, after the third, fourth day, is uh, ask them questions which are like, tell me something about your childhood, one thing
Mm,
that you would not change,
yeah.
and one thing that you would change.
Yeah.
So questions like that got them thinking.
Yeah.
And the other problem that I have found with the corporate world is that they don't put on their videos.
Oh
I don't
yeah.
know if you found that a problem. But
Yeah.
they just don't put on their videos. They were instructed by the HR team that the videos need to be on, but no,
Oh yeah.
they
Yeah.
don't listen. They don't
I've
listen.
become pretty painful about that, and I just stop. Put your videos on. But yeah, I know what you're saying. It's crazy. Trupti, I just wanted to explore this saying that um, you spoke a lot about now just going over to the other side. So corporate is one, and the other side is your open programs, and that's a game that I know that you've cracked. You know, yeah, and you're doing all kinds of stuff, not just past life, not just hypnotherapy, but for couples, for kids, for grown-ups, different permutation combinations,
Yeah.
different content, different audiences, different places. I know you do something in Rishikesh as well. Um, Here's my question. For a facilitator starting out in this game of not facilitation, but the open workshops, or some call it the masterclass space.
Yeah.
What is your advice to a facilitator? I know it's a slightly generic question because I need to ask you, so what's the topic? If it's a Six Sigma training program, it's a very different ball game. But I'm saying broadly in this area of self-awareness or mindfulness or the kind of stuff that you do, or even leadership and teams and taking people out.
Sure.
Not so left brain. I'm just trying to make a delineation. Not so
I
left brain,
understand.
more
Yeah.
right brain stuff. What's some 2-3 things that you can tell a facilitator going out there and trying to get the class to fill up? Because today, this webinars abound and training programs abound. So how do you crack that?
So the first thing I would tell somebody is to write.
Okay.
They should write whatever they're doing, whatever work they're doing, whatever they believe in, whatever they're passionate about, right? To open an FB page or whatever you want to open and just write every single day. Because I believe that when you write daily, there's an audience that is waiting for you. So that's the first thing, which is what I did. I mean, I started it 10 years ago and I write every single day. And I think that encourages the facilitator to read a lot.
Oh, yeah. But if I may just interrupt for a second there, let's just say Facebook, or let's just say Facebook for a second, because LinkedIn, okay, I get it. It's more professional. Now, let's say a concept like leadership, something or the other on leadership. Somebody wants to start up something or the other on leadership. Now, if you post on Facebook, are you saying, I'm just getting into the weeds over here a little bit.
Yeah.
But if you post on Facebook, so are you saying use groups or just post on Facebook? Because Facebook is all about your friends. So I can get, if you're doing past life and stuff or hypnotherapy, then everybody's interested in that. But if it's a little more niched and saying leadership, whatever in leadership.
I think it depends on what you're writing on a particular topic. If there is a personal story, like if I had to do let's say a kind of a leadership program, I would write about people that I had met who've maybe got rags to riches stories. Just normal people like an auto driver or a motorman or maybe my sweeper's son. Because these are the real life stories everybody's interested in reading. I'm not talking about writing from a book, oh, these are the pointers to become a good leader. That's very boring for people to read.
Yeah.
They have to be human stories. You can even read up something, something from the old lexicon, Reader's Digest. Okay, because they had some amazing stories. And just write it in your own words, what you learn from this particular article from the digest. Anything. See, the key, Greg, I believe, is you have to touch somebody's heart. Do you want to do a leadership training? Want to do past life therapy? Want to do anything?
If I may devil's advocate on that and say, yes, that is sound advice. And a lot of people are following that. That's a problem. So when, the space when Facebook just started out, okay, or 5 years into starting out, okay. But today, if you go to LinkedIn, there's this crazy amount of information and a lot of people are doing just this. And everybody now knows that storytelling is a good, powerful tool. It is, I certainly say, complete thumbs up to that. But there's a deluge of information out there. So how do you bridge that? Are you saying just by fact of just writing, but then there are lots of people that are doing this every single day, again writing. So how do you beat that?
No, I really don't know. For me, I can just talk about what I did.
Okay.
Right? I don't know whether it works for somebody, doesn't work for somebody. What I did was I wrote every day. So I was seeing patients, like 3 people in a day sometimes, okay? So I had so many past life stories. So I would write every day. So the first thing is your work. Whether you are working passionately, are you working and making notes about what you're doing every day? Is it really interesting for you? And then putting it out out there, right? So it's your work. I'm not talking about somebody's working. No, your work. So the first thing is your work. How involved and engaged are you in your work?
Right.
Whether it means something to you, whether it's meaningful to you, whether it's purposeful for you. Because an article that somebody writes where the work is meaningful will have a different ring to it.
Mm.
Whereas somebody just writing an article, Greg,
Right.
it's a difference.
Absolutely. And it comes through in the writing.
Yeah. So that's something that I did. And I'd encourage others to do that too.
What else?
The second thing is make a network.
Mhm.
Meet people, attend conferences, attend workshops, create a beautiful, now that we have WhatsApp, okay, or we have these other tools, create groups, create platforms where you can engage with others who are either interested in your work or you're interested in their work. And this is the time to be authentic and genuine.
Mm.
It's not to use people. Please
Mhm.
understand. Don't create a network to use others.
Mm.
Create a network where you're genuinely interested in people, what they're doing, what happens to them, how did they become who they are. So that engagement needs to be very, very authentic. And then you should have a good either event manager or somebody who can put you up there.
Mm.
I was lucky. I was really, really fortunate and lucky that I have these two amazing angels who came into my life from Calcutta, Abhilasha and Shrija.
Mm.
They just contacted me. I never knew them ever in my life. And they just contacted me 10 years ago. And they said, ma'am, we want to work with you. And I said, okay, And they look after all my outbound retreats, my many workshops. Um, they are like my two daughters now.
Wow.
They are, and that's the other thing, Greg. When you work with others, they become your family. It's not that you use people and say, okay, they're my event managers,
Yeah.
or they are the people who, kind of deal with the lodging and boarding and everything else about the participants who come for the retreat. It's not that. They're my family members. I love them. For little things, we have a group and we chat, and then we go shopping together, we go out eating together. It's like a family. And I think that's how I treat all my participants.
Yeah. Nice.
It's like I believe in creating a tribe of people.
Nice.
That's very
Nice.
important for me.
And folks, I know Trupti is just busy, crazy throughout the year. So golden words, please take this wisdom. If you really want to do an open program, that's these three pieces, way to go. So write. Use storytelling when you're writing. Stories are good, the pathos bit of it. Create a network. And I think the magic sauce in creating a network is something which is very scarce these days. Be interested in people. Be interested not so much in what you want to put out, but also interested in what people are saying. Tap into that. The third piece I'm taking away is you need an event manager. So event manager or PR person, are those synonymous? Would you say, Trupti, or
I
different?
don't think, I don't like to use the word PR and event manager. I just said it because maybe that's how people will, comprehend it. But for me, it's like a sharing, right? So anybody who works with me takes 50% of the earnings.
Yeah. Wow.
Okay, I want or everybody to grow together.
Yeah.
That's the purpose. It's not about money. Please understand. It's about having people who care and share everything. That's the way to go.
And for as many people that I know of that say that it's not about the money and really believe it, the money comes. Somehow it just comes.
Yes.
And Trupti, we're getting close to the end of the episode. And I just have one or two questions. That's it, short, quick ones. You mentioned, when you were referring to Reader's Digest, you did mention reading up something from the old. And that's where I want to take you and say, if you were to advise a facilitator saying, hey, go read up some stuff. Now that's very, so two things over there. One, it's a very broad thing to say that, many books and many different directions it could go. Also, when you say go read up, a lot of times what I'm taking away, even subconsciously without thinking about it, is that a Western book written by a Western author or Western thought, even if it's written by an Indian author, Western thought. And I just want to go take a left turn over there and say, hey, you know what, that's okay. We'll get to that book list, and there are many book lists out there. Something from the ancient texts. In a previous chat that we had before this call, you mentioned the Upanishads. If you could just share something that facilitator could read to up his or her facilitation game in whatever way, whether it is giving stories, whether it is changing the own mind, whether it, and I'm sure, and I'm inspired by this, and this is a project I really want to pick up, plumbing the depths of our Indian ancient texts for stuff on learning. How the hell does learning happen? The West is doing a crazy amount of research, and in a way, this podcast is about that. So, any suggestions?
Well, Greg, whether you do a leadership program, or you do a past life therapy program, or you do mindfulness training, the key is everybody wants happiness, right? Everybody wants care, affection, love, recognition. It's the same thing that everybody wants.
Absolutely.
And the Bhagavad Gita is the text, is an epic that should be read because it tells you about the three paths, the Karma Yoga, the Jnana Yoga, and the Bhakti Yoga. The devotion, work being worship, and knowledge. And I think for any program, these are the three things that we should base our program on. The other Upanishad, which I really enjoy reading, is the Mandukya Upanishad.
Sorry, how do you spell that?
It's M-A-N-D Mandukya, K-Y-A, Mandukya Upanishad, M-A-N-D-U-K-Y-A.
M-A-N-V-U-K-Y-A.
The Mandukya Upanishad.
Okay.
And especially if you're doing mindful training, this is the Upanishad to read because it tells you the structure of the mind. It tells you about what the mind is all about, and it relates so beautifully scientifically to the brain waves. So that's the Upanishad that everybody must read because the whole Upanishad can be translated into a workshop. It's such a brilliant Upanishad. So that's another Upanishad. And because I do a lot of work on death and dying also, I would say the Tibetan Book of Living and Dying. I go by it. It is amazing by Songyal Rinpoche. That's the book to
Living
read.
And Dying.
And the Garuda Puran.
Oh, sorry.
So the Garuda Puran.
No, just one. Sorry. It's a Tibetan book of living and dying by
Songyal Rinpoche. S-O-N-G-Y-A-L. Songyal Rinpoche. And the Garuda Puran is definitely a book that we must all read about hell.
Okay.
And we should know about hell, right? Because we always want heaven, but then we do everything that takes us to hell.
Yeah.
So we better just know what hell is all about.
Yeah.
And then we have the Katha Upanishad, which is another amazing book on death. It's a beautiful book. And a lot of it is filled with interesting stories, So the storytelling part can be brought out from the Upanishad itself. And then you have the Tibetan Book of the Dead, another amazing book to read, okay? I also do a lot of work, like you rightly said, with children and parents. And there is this Upanishad, which is called the Garbho Upanishad. Garbho means the womb. So the Garbho Upanishad actually speaks about, you will not imagine that tiny Upanishad which was written 5,000 years ago or more, I don't know when, actually tells you about how the fetus is formed every week. There was no science, there was no microscope, there was no sonography in those days, but doctors, the medical text and the Garbha Upanishad match completely.
This is new stuff for me completely. I can't wait to go and buy these things. And so is there somebody whose translation we should read or just?
So it is on the internet. There are kind of PDFs. I will send it to you.
Okay.
So you can read. And trust me, they're gems, they're treasures. Our scriptures are so rich.
Absolutely.
But nobody's interested in that. We're interested in reading some Western philosopher and some Western motivational speaker.
Yeah.
Okay. And I think we've become parrots. Parroting what somebody is saying. And I want to quote Osho here because Osho said, I can talk about my experience, but I cannot give it to you. But what are people doing? They're taking people's experience and saying, this is mine.
Yeah.
It's not possible.
It's not. It is not, yeah.
So let us explore ourselves, right? That's what I would tell people, really.
Let's explore ourselves. You've given me quite a nice set of books, and I'm just going to dive deep into them. I'm guilty of just going the Western route, not taking anything away from them. They've contributed to the world. They've helped me. But this is something, and I just feel this at a very intuitive level, that this is the way I would like to go. And this is something I want to, delve deeper into. So just to go over that again, Manvyakya, am I getting it right?
Mandukya.
Mandukya, oh, there's a D. Okay. Mandukya Upanishad, the Tibetan book of living and dying, Songyal Rinpoche, right?
Yes, that's the author. Yeah.
Garud Puran,
Purana.
Purana.
Yeah, Garuda.
Yeah,
Garud. It's all on the internet. I'll send you all the PDFs.
Katha Upanishad and the Tibetan Book of the Dead. And lastly, Garbha Upanishad.
Yes, Garbha Upanishad. Must read.
Must
for a lot of people. Yeah.
In closing, Trupti, any last message for the facilitators out there?
So I have this, I love anagrams. So I'd say when you become a facilitator, the question is always how.
Sorry, when you become a facilitator, the question is how do you become?
I said when you become a facilitator, how do I become a better facilitator? How do I bring my content out? So HOW. That's what we work with. But I want to turn it around and say who. WHO. Okay. And what I want to say is that H is for heal yourself.
Okay, I'm writing this down.
O is for own yourself.
Okay.
And W is for wow yourself.
Okay. Because
till you heal yourself, you will not be able to own every aspect of yourself. Whether it's your emotion, it's your thoughts, it's your feelings, it's your expectations, your desires. And unless you own yourself, own who you are, you cannot wow anybody. Nobody's going to say wow. I truly believe heal, own, and wow.
Heal, own, and wow.
And then when you do that, Greg, when you go HOW, you actually go WHO. You wow everybody because you healed and you owned yourself completely. Wow. So I think the how needs to be turned on its feet, on its head rather, to becoming who. Who are you? Why should somebody come and listen to you? Ask yourself that question. why would somebody come and listen to you? I mean, who are you? So stop looking at how to be a better facilitator and focus on who you are as a facilitator.
We have covered so much ground today, but also you have answered questions that I've not even asked. So right up front, there was a question that I didn't even ask, and somebody who's cynical about this gets into the room. You answered that, and right now you're doing the same thing. One of the questions on my mind, and I was wondering, should I get into it? We're kind of closing now, but you've actually inadvertently answered that, responded to that, which is, how do you create insights in a training program? How do you create epiphany moments in a training program? And in a way, there's a lot that's said around role modeling. When people see a facilitator, there's inspiration that happens automatically. If they see a person who's really done that struggle and wrestling with the shadow part of them and is operating out of real experience and real effort, inspiration just happens.
Yes.
And in a way, you've given me an answer to that. How do you create insights in class? This is a topic I've been chasing for quite a while. Trupti, it's been great speaking with you. There have been, 1,000 questions I could have asked, and I just bit back on them. And all I can say is looking forward to seeing you on the show sometime down the line.
Definitely. Thank you, Greg. It was wonderful. First of all, connecting back with you and this conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ji.
Bye.